So I was told last time that I didn't go long enough, so I should just keep going this time. So just so you know, Monty, I added like 3-4 more pages. Nothing about me, but just random things that I thought were funny. No, so what I wanted to start, and I said this last time too, hearing Chris talk and, kind of thinking about where the warehouse has come. I was the first member of the warehouse. I was the youth group for a while, and they had a staff of 3 people, and just me. But one thing I thought was really cool is listening to Chris talk reminded me that I was one of the first people to set foot in our actual warehouse up in Snoqualmie, and my last week on staff happened to coincide with our very last week up at the warehouse, which was really neat. And one of the things that Chris had all the students do was write goodbye notes to the warehouse and just kind of talk about what the warehouse had meant to them, just, a private note. And so I went in there on my very last day before I left staff here, and I just kind of sat and was reading the messages, and somebody had written, "Thank you, warehouse, for giving me a place where I can go and I know that I'm loved, and this is the first time I've ever realized that somebody cared about me for who I was." And I just thought, that's so beautiful, and that's so my story and my journey. And it was so fitting to have that send-off from there. So all that said, now I'll get into what I actually wrote. Okay, so I'll start with Romans 8:26-28 says, "Meanwhile, the moment we get tired in the waiting, God's Spirit is right alongside helping us. If we don't know how or what to pray, it doesn't matter. He does our praying in and for us, making prayer out of our wordless sighs and our aching groans. He knows us far better than we know ourselves. He knows our pregnant condition, and he keeps us present before God always. That's why we can be so sure that every detail in our lives of love for God is worked into something good." When I was 7 years old, my world was rocked when my dad died suddenly and unexpectedly on a family vacation in Ocean Shores. I remember driving home from that vacation and just knowing, even though I still didn't quite understand what death meant, that my world had changed in a completely inexplicable way. As people entered and exited my life, and everything that I knew changed, I determined that I had to be the one constant. I needed to be the one thing that didn't change, because I didn't feel like I could count on anything or anyone, because everybody could leave me at some point. So as a 7-year-old, I committed to being the one constant in my own life, which worked for a while. But progressively, things became harder to manage. By the time I reached my junior year of high school, I had lost all 4 of my grandparents, 2 close family friends who had kind of stepped in after my dad died to be a dad to me, and my 15-year-old childhood friend died in a car accident. Having never fully dealt with my dad's loss or any of the losses thereafter, I just began to crumble. My whole body and existence just started to disintegrate. I gained weight, and soon I weighed well over 200 pounds, even though I didn't eat very much. I couldn't sleep at night. I'd stay up late, but then I couldn't wake up in the morning. My hair started to fall out, and inwardly I just started to destruct. I began to have fantasies constantly of death and dying, and I was rarely able to get out of bed, as I felt that this was my only safe place under the sheets where the world couldn't get to me. I lost the physical capability to formulate tears, and subsequently I just sat in my bed for hours and screamed at a God that I hardly knew and I just couldn't trust. At about the same time that my life had spun completely out of control, my mom decided to bring us to a new church in Snoqualmie that had just gotten started, Snoqualmie Valley Alliance. In the fog I was existing in, I didn't think much of it, but I now see how splendidly God was working in this moment. On that first Sunday morning, we walked into Obstead Elementary School with about 5 other people. And we sat down to hear a message, and I met In that room of only maybe 5, 10 people at the max, I met some of the people who have made the hugest impacts on my life since then. My future youth leaders through SVA's Budding Youth Group. And I just want to say, one thing that I think SVA has always done well, we've always been missional, but it's always been such a huge focus on that next generation. And to now be that generation that was invested in and has grown up, I can say with complete certainty that if God hadn't put that in my life, I wouldn't be alive, because I had already planned out what I was going to do and how I wanted to go and when it was going to happen, and nothing was going to change that. And so those 10 people in the room who all at some point were involved with the youth group all poured into my life and saved it. So I just thank SVA for that. The turning point in my life came one evening at youth group when I found myself surrounded by youth leaders who refused to leave me alone. And they wouldn't believe me when I said, "I'm fine, leave me alone." They prayed over me and they gave me hope and a sense of importance and meaning, though I couldn't figure out why they cared so much. After that moment, I had accountability. People in my life who asked too many questions, who sent me constant emails, who called me too much, and who kept affirming me when I felt crummy, and even when I felt on top of the world. They loved me the way that I know now that Jesus had always loved me. I really believe that my involvement in this youth group saved my life. Jesus used these people, this church, and the SVA youth group to speak truth into the black void that was me at that moment, and I eventually decided that I was worth it. I got treatment for my depression, and I started to combat the awful lie that the enemy had exploited in my heart, that I was worthless and I didn't deserve to be here. Since beginning at SVA, God has used the wonderful people here in so many ways in my life. SVA has been at every major event in my life since high school, including I skipped a line and said my first wedding. No, my first homecoming dance, and my first wedding, accepting Jesus, getting baptized, my prom, my graduations, first boyfriends, first heartbreaks, the purchase of my first house, of our first house, injuries, illnesses, ruptured Achilles, down days, up days, new pets, car accidents, and new jobs, just to name a few things. God's also given me the tremendous, tremendous honor of being able to work with the kids and students that have come through SVA, your kids, your students, and get to pour my heart into them. I hope and pray that someday Jesus can use me to be the one who asks too many questions, who sends out too many emails, who shows up and is just Jesus' huge loving arms and his unshakable acceptance. Who knows? Maybe my story is the encouragement that one student needs to hear. Maybe Jesus can redeem some dark years in my soul by letting me be a light to someone who's as lost as I was. Even as I write this testimony, I'm in another time of growth and mourning, having just recently lost a very loved family member. But surrounding me in a cabin in the woods of eastern Washington are my SVA small group members who are anxiously awaiting me to finish my testimony so that they can hear my story. My small group members who refused to let me stay home last night when I said, I just want to be alone. I've come to realize that as Romans 8:26 through 28 states, God knew what needed to be done in my life even before I knew, and when all I could do was scream at him, even when I didn't know who he was. He promises that every aching sigh and wordless groan is heard as a prayer for help, and that he won't waste these hurts, but rather he'll use them to make something good. I still battle with depression, but depression no longer defines or owns me. I belong to Jesus Christ, someone I spent so much time hating and running away from, and now I love him in just an insatiable way. I'm so blessed to get to share that love with students and today with everyone who's here. So I just want to say thank you, SVA, for being such a huge part of my life. Thank you, SVA, for being such a huge part of my life. Happy 10th birthday, and thanks for hearing the call to everybody who's here and who's on stage. This church saved my life, and it saved many other people's lives and still will continue to change lives. I'm so incredibly blessed that I just get to be one small thread in this greater tapestry of SVA.